The Starr and D'Amico Show, brought to you by cheapesttshirts.ca. Need blanks for your next event or club? Check out cheapesttshirts.ca. No minimum order, free shipping over $350. Same-day shipping on lots of items. Affordable, Canadian, ready to print your design. Brought to you by Catherine Prince at Remax Platine, your Montreal real estate connection. Call her at 514-702-2474 or email Catherine with a K, Catherine at catherineprince.com. If you're looking to buy, sell, or invest with confidence, Catherine Prince, your key to the city's property market. Brought to you by McLean's Pub. Looking for a lively downtown spot with great food and atmosphere? Come to McLean's Pub on Peel Street. Classic pub eats, plenty of beer, and all the sports on all the screens. Grab your friends and make McLean's your go-to place tonight. Brought to you by Cabletel, your full-service telecom partner for business and home. From structured cabling and phone systems to Wi-Fi, cameras, and alarms, Cabletel keeps you connected, secure, and performing at your best. Your partner for the future. It's Cabletel. Time for another edition of the Starr and D'Amico Show. Welcome, everybody, coming at you live. Not really. I just felt like saying that. Marco D'Amico, what's good, brother?
Not bad. It's been a pretty hectic week in terms of being able to follow prospects, World Junior Championship coming up. But I think there's one in particular we really need to start breaking down here.
And if you're following prospects, World Juniors, the Montreal Canadiens are playing all the time, nonstop. And we've been here covering it like a blanket. Thank you so much for being with us as the road to 20,000 subscribers begins with each and every single one of you. Shout out, of course, to our sponsors. And by the way, thank you so much from the audience on behalf of Marco and I for with your loyalty and supporting our sponsors. It means a lot and keeps the channel going. In particular, at Little Bear on St. Catherine across from Westmount Square. You need welcome to the winter hellscape that is Montreal. You need booties for your dog walk. They've got the expertise advice. They've got all the models and all the brands. Chuck and Evie and their wonderful staff care about your pet as much as you do. You can order your pets goods online if you want at littlebearonline.com. So Marco alluded to this. Bryce Pickford, the defenseman from the Medicine Hat Tigers, Marco, is having a historic season. We'll put it in perspective, but to give you the groundwork, this is a defenseman that the Montreal Canadiens chose last year, 81st overall in round number 3. What kind of defenseman after 30 games has 24 goals? This kid in his last 10 has 10 goals and 16 points, including 5 game winners and 4 game winners in a row, Marco. Let's lead you off with this one. This is the definition of a steal, who the Canadiens got in the 3rd round of the draft last year.
At the moment in which we are speaking, with the trajectory that he has had in his game, Bryce Pickford looks like a draft day steal. And kudos to a bunch of our Western guys that follow the channel that have been talking about him for a while. I've wanted to talk about him, but you never know when. You never know when to reach the point of being like, okay, like let's unpack this. But 5 multi-goal games, in such a short period, we have no choice but to talk about him. Right now, having an historic season. So what's going on? Well, he's got 24 goals as a right shot defenseman in 30 games for the Medicine Hat Tigers. For anybody who knows who the Medicine Hat Tigers are, Gavin McKenna was playing for them last year. Caden Lindstrom was playing for them last year. They had a bunch of really strong depth. Ryder Ritchie was playing for them last year. He's now at Boston University in the NCAA. They lost a lot of talent to the NCAA. Even Andrew Basha, who is a 2nd round pick of the Calgary Flames, jumps ship to the AHL. So they lost so much talent after they went on their championship run last spring. And everybody thought they were going to be a bottom-dwelling team. And out comes Bryce Pickford right now, not only leading them in scoring with 42 points in 30 games, but ladies and gentlemen, leads the entire WHL.
My gosh.
With 24 goals in 30 games. Defenseman and forward included. And I think it's important to talk about this because scoring in junior doesn't mean diddly squat when you get to the NHL. But it's how he's scoring, and it's the way he's getting those goals that I think is the most important part. Because you can in junior there's from especially from the point, you look at a lot of junior scoring, you can get goals from the point far easier in major junior than you would, for example, in the American Hockey League and especially in the NHL, right? Those long ranging shots don't always go in the NHL. I think
Hmm.
we could see that with the current edition of the Montreal Canadiens. You know, their point shots aren't really driving home. You have to get a little deeper or you have to catch a goalie off. Well, Bryce Pickford, you know, does a lot of that. Does shoot from the point, but what makes him dangerous is he shoots from anywhere and is absolutely unafraid to go into the high danger areas. Absolutely unafraid. And I think offensively, we're going to get to the defensive side and the physicality and whatnot. But just offensively, I've rarely seen a defenseman take off like this. I've
Hmm.
rarely ever seen this. And right now, he's got 24 goals in 30 games. He's pacing in a 65, 67 game season. He's pacing for 50 plus goals.
Crazy.
Ladies and gentlemen, just so we understand this, in the history of the CHL, never mind just what's going on in junior hockey in general. The WHL hasn't had a 50 goal defenseman since 1990. The OHL hasn't had one since 1979. The Q never had one. That's
I
how
mean,
rare this is.
that's that. I mean, it's obviously, we prefaced the start of the conversation. I mean, it is clearly a historic season. And can we identify, last season in 48 games, again for Medicine Hat, 20 goals in 48 games, and finished with 47 points. But his playoff run, where he got into 18 games, scored 13 goals, and finished with 24 points. I mean, this guy can score some goals. I mean, he's done it over a sustained period of time. Was the playoff tournament for Medicine Hit last year maybe the coming out party that got a
Yes.
lot of people? I mean, playoffs are, the cliche in hockey. That's where your reputation is made, is what you do when games matter the most. And this guy
Yeah.
really found another level in 18 games for the Medicine Hat Tigers.
Absolutely. And I think, I was having this conversation at the draft in Los Angeles when he was taken. It was just massive increase in production. I mean, already last year, 20 goals in 48 games. Like, you have to
Yeah.
understand this. Bryce Pickford was drafted, you know, 81st, so third round in
Yeah.
this past draft as an overager, right? As a 19-year-old. But the season he had as an 18-year-old, 18 to 19, so what we normally call a draft plus one season, right? His 18 to 19-year-old season was basically a point per game. He had 20 goals. A defenseman drafted at 18 that puts up those kinds of stats belongs in the first or second round of that year in
Hmm.
terms of the output, right? Like, that's impressive. Well, you're seeing it now where he's putting up, he's almost at a point and a half per game as a defenseman in
Yeah.
a team that was depleted, so that he is now the captain. He is now their main offensive weapon with Jonas Wu and like, everyone's kind of building off that. The two highest scoring defensemen in the WHL right now play for Medicine Hat because it's just the top pair, right? And one is feeding off each other. You have Bryce Pickford with 24 goals in 30 games, and you have Jonas Wu who has 15 goals in 25 games. They are first and second in scoring and goal scoring for the Medicine
Hmm.
Hat Tigers. So it's impressive that the back end is what's pushing out. I've never seen this before. You look at a guy like Zane Parrick, if you go back, maybe a Ryan Ellis that impacted the game this level. But the way that he's playing right now, like, it's rare. It's trending. The way that he continues to play trends towards being a potential 90 to 100 point defenseman in junior. And if you do that, you reach an elite level of category. So to me, from an offensive perspective, he is trending. I'm not saying he's there. He is trending towards a very historic season.
So the follow-up question to me is, and we did, what I thought was a very interesting video on Montreal Canadian prospects representing three different countries is who we focused on. Atos Koivu in Finland, LJ Mooney for the United States of America, and of
Mhm.
course, Michael Hage for Team Canada, all three Montreal Canadian prospects in their cupboards. Here we are now talking about another Canadians prospect in Bryce Pickford having a historic season, and Marco just laid the groundwork. Something that it rarely happens in the CHL. It's never happened in the Q, where a defenseman is on pace scores 50 goals. He's on pace for 50 plus, right? So
Mhm.
the obvious follow up is, how come we're not talking about him on Team Canada?
Well, I think it's an issue of timing.
Mm,
Zane Parrick is the right shot offensive defenseman. And I think as much as we talk about Bryce Pickford, I think Zane Parrick is a better player. Like it is what it is, right? Zane Parek is has NHL experience, is a defenseman that was in the 90 to 100 point range in his draft year. Like I don't think anybody would be saying that Bryce Pickford should be playing over Zane Parek. So if you have Parek as your number one right shot defenseman, that's kind of done. That the power play offensive shot kind of that's the guy you have there. After that, you have Harrison Brunicky, who has also got NHL experience and who was a better defenseman in the WHL last year than Bryce Pickford. And I would gather that he would probably be the best overall defenseman in the WHL if he were playing there right now. But Pittsburgh decided to keep him on this season and now loaned him to Team Canada. He's the all around, can do it all defenseman, and that's a specific role as well.
mhm.
And so then you get to your third pair. Well, you're going to need a shutdown guy, right? You're going to need different personalities. You can't just load them up with offensive guys, and you already have Zane Parrick. So what
Yeah.
do? You bring in a guy, especially if it's Dale Hunter that's making these calls. You bring in a guy like a Danford or a Keaton Vierhoff who's going to be there probably next year and maybe even the year after that, right? So I understand not wanting to waste Bryce Pickford's time. I don't know that he wouldn't have been invited had this stat line existed 2 weeks ago. Like, he was close, but
Right.
he's gone off, right? Like, if I'm not mistaken, Pickford's like, I think he has like 7 or 8 goals in his last
It,
6
he's got
games or
10 in
something.
his last 10.
There you go. So,
Yeah.
like, it's a huge jump, right?
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah.
I feel like if he was at this pace of scoring earlier, we would have a deeper conversation. But he's just improved and improved and improved and improved and improved and improved, and it's crazy. So I think where I would take this and what I would kind of urge fans is like it doesn't really matter that he did or did not get invited to Team Canada. I
Mhm.
don't think that they feel because if first of all, yeah, I don't think that they feel that it was necessarily needed. You're having Perek, Brunicky is there. They may get on the left side Sam Dickinson back,
Right.
right? And then you have Kashan Aitchison, who is also a high scoring defenseman, right? Like in his own right, he's the defenseman scoring leader in the OHL in his own right. But he plays on the left side as opposed to Bryce Pickford playing on the crowded right side. Like if there was a position on Team Canada this year that was the hardest to crack, it was the right defense position.
Mhm.
And listen, it's not a be all end all in terms of a career. I think we talked about this recently. You look
Yeah.
at Ryan Paling winning the
MVP.
MVP and going on
Yeah.
to be, respectfully, maybe a third line center, if not a fourth line center. Like it always happens like that. You have superstars that go on to become superstars, and you just have guys that peak at the right moment in these tournaments. So I'm not sweating that kind of a call. What I look for though is how translatable is this success to the pros? I think that's the biggest question you got to ask yourself.
And I think further to that, right? When it came to Team Canada general manager Alan Miller talking about what they're looking at, outlining how he built his junior team. He mentioned that it's not an all-star team. He talked about building what is a true team in his estimation, types of players and people that you need to win. I think it goes and reinforces the point you talk about when they're building their top six, and roles that certain players would fill, right? So let me
Mhm.
bring in former Montreal Canadian prospect Logan Mailloux into the conversation, who played for the famous London Knights program out of the Ontario Hockey League. And in his final year, the year there in 59 games, had 53 points and 25 goals. Are we talking about a similar player in style and reputation on the ice? When we talk about Bryce Pickford and Logan Mailloux, guys that are gifted at scoring
Yeah.
goals, offense, defense is something they're work on to get better in order to one day remain a full-time NHL player?
Well, I think the clear difference between Mayu and Pickford is size.
Yeah,
Mayu's more physical, I would say. Like that's his brand. And obviously, like being 6'3", 200-ish pounds, like
yeah.
he was a big boy, right?
First
I
round
don't
pick.
think Bryce
Yeah,
Pick, yeah, well, I
yeah,
mean, the first round pick was debatable. Well, I mean, yeah, he was a first round pick talent. Like I'm not gonna argue that. At the time, it was just more everything else that was happening in the background.
yeah.
But with Pickford, Pickford is just a little bit smaller, you know, 6'1", 185. I think he fills out to about 190, 195 when all is said and done. And
Okay.
that's still really good. Like if you're hovering around the 195, 200 pounds, like you're gonna be a hard defenseman to play against. I think the shooting ability. I used to think that Logan Mayu had this level of shooting ability that I just thought was incredible. Bryce Pickford probably has a better release than Logan Mayu did in junior. And that's one of the reasons why he's so difficult to play against. Where
Mhm.
I think Bryce Pickford differs from a Logan Mayu is Bryce Pickford's on ice IQ right here. It's the one thing that I've noticed from him going back to the WHL playoffs last year. This is a guy that elevates under pressure.
Right.
This is a guy that can think a game very quickly, and from an offensive perspective, it's just he scored a goal end to end over the weekend, where a lot of little things, a lot of little details in his play, but a lot of quick thinking and speed of execution, just the stick handling, positioning, the pivoting of the hips in the middle of his run. It was just little details like that that allow you to think like this guy. This is not like he may not be top end offensive defenseman in the NHL, but he
Mhm.
went from interesting overager to legitimate prospect in the last 30 games, in my honest opinion. What will make or break, and this is the same thing for me, what will make or break this defenseman is how he defends. That is what they're looking for. And I will be honest with you, Bryce Pickford was not, the soundest of defensemen last year in terms of just being able to cover, but that championship pedigree, being able to tighten up games in the playoffs, I think it really helped him. His gap control has significantly improved. He's got an active stick. He is the counterattack for Medicine Hat right now. Like it's just
Mhm.
he breaks up the play, sends it back the other way, or will skate it out himself. I think I'd like to see him play even meaner. Not that he's not, but I just if he could really like bring playoff level intensity on a regular basis in his own zone, then I mean we are having a very real conversation about where he fits in the Canadians organization long term. So just the regular things, but what you're seeing from him from an offensive perspective, there is one caution sign that I want to bring up. The WHL lost a significant amount of talent this year. Significant. So what you're seeing is impressive. Yes. But I also want to just pour a little bit of water here and say
Mhm.
that he is a legitimate prospect. What we're seeing right now is a legitimate prospect. What he's doing, very kudos to him in terms of what he's improved his skating, his shooting ability, everything. But this is probably the weakest the WHL has been in a very long time. So I've spoken to scouts on this that are on both sides of the fence, and I just want to present both sides of the evaluation. I think that Bryce Pickford is for real.
Mhm.
And I think that, if he continues to improve, there is a legitimate avenue for him to play in the NHL. But I also don't want to run away with the narrative that, the Canadians got themselves like, the best defenseman of the 2025 draft or something like that. Like, even though you have Matthew Schaefer, that's,
Yeah.
probably going to win the Calder.
Yeah, I
But
would think so.
I'm just saying, like, I don't want to start the hype machine too high, but I do want to say that this is a beautiful problem for the Canadians to have when it comes to figuring out the future and having
Mhm.
their junior assets or their younger assets gain in value before they even get to the NHL.
So with the season Bryce Pickford is having, 24
Mhm,
goals, 42 points after 30 games, 16 points in his last 10 with 10 goals over that stretch. I guess my final question on the Pickford topic would be, and I guess I think you alluded to it there. Here's a guy, 6 foot, a little bit, right
6'1".
side, it doesn't make someone like David Reinbacher expendable, in other words, right? Because we
No.
heard last week, are the Canadians going to have to go to their area of strength if they really want to make an air quote significant move? And as we know, and we've talked about this regularly on this channel, right? The
Mhm.
area of strength for the Canadians is who they have on the blue line today and who's on the come up. Adam Engstrom playing, decent hockey at the NHL level. David Reinbacher now 50 plus games of AHL experience. He's looking better and better as each game passes by. Here we are 20 minutes on third round selection Bryce Pickford, who's having a historic season for the Western Hockey League's Medicine Hat Tigers. So if I hear you correctly, I mean, on the right side, David Reinbacher is still the man. We're talking about the potential of a top right-handed defenseman for the Montreal Canadiens. And Bryce Pickford, what he's doing, while we're paying attention, it doesn't mean anyone else is expendable at this point.
I don't think that the two are related. I think that in his, if things continue to improve for David Reinbacher, and Lord knows he's been really, really good defensively for the Laval
Yeah.
Rocket for a
Yeah.
while now. I don't think that they play the same style at all. I don't think they would occupy the same roles on a team. Um, you just got to think that with a guy like Bryce Pickford, I think that there's a lot of time for things to develop, right? Like, I don't think he's a guy that's going to be playing in the NHL within 2 years, maybe three. You know, I think you see him in Laval next year, and you kind of see where things go.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think there's any rush. And I think that's the beauty of his situation, right? Is the Canadians, by picking up an overager, they're getting a guy that's going to be closer to NHL readiness than an 18-year-old in that regularly picked out of the third round. But his development makes it so that it becomes very interesting. And part of me is, part of the equation is you have this guy that's clearly outclassed the expectations of a guy picked in his spot. That makes his trade value excessively high for a right shot defenseman. But on the flip side, his value could potentially go even further, not even
Sure.
just for the organization, but on the trade market if he's able to do it in the AHL. Right? You
I
look at
can't
Logan
imagine.
Mayu. Look at
Yeah.
Logan Mayu's value. Logan
Mm-hmm.
Mayu's value came because he was able to bring the offense that everybody expected from him in the OHL to the AHL.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that really, and being a right shot and being a first round
Exactly.
pick and being that big made him a valuable piece to go out and get a Zachary Bolduc. And there were other offers, of course. But this is why I say no rush. Really good problem to have. But I don't see the Canadians ever having to make a choice between David Reinbacher and Bryce Pickford. I think it's good to have different types of players that play on the
Agreed.
same side. If the Canadians have to dip anywhere, it's on the left side of their defense. That, to me, they have three bona fide top four left shot defensemen right now. And then you have an Adam Engstrom, then you have a
Yeah.
Jaden Struble, and then
Yeah.
you have an Arbor Jackeye. And, the game goes on and on. Owen Protz also turning pro next year. So I would expect, the Canadians to have to start like making decisions on that
Mhm.
defense. So if they had to make a move like that, I believe it would be on the left side.
Fascinating stuff. Exciting weekend for Canadian prospects. Also notice Hayden Papanikis, Marco, is on a little bit of a tear. 5
Yep.
points the other night. He's got 10 points in his last 6 games here. Nice to see the development, right? With some
Well, that
offensive capabilities.
that poor boy started the season. Wasn't able to get to. I remember I interviewed him right before rookie camp.
Yeah.
Arrives to rookie camp,
Yeah.
mononucleosis, like just
Right.
terrible.
Right.
And if you talk to anybody who's had mono, it takes like months, like at least a month, to really get back into it from the moment you play your first game coming back from mono. Because like you lose a ton of weight.
Yeah.
You're out of breath easy. Like it's very difficult. So seeing him really now start to rev up, and it's not by chance, right? Like think about it. TJ Ginla on the Kelowna Rockets plays center. TJ Ginla just is going to probably be playing on the same line as Michael Hage in this tournament, at least to start.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have Hayden Papanikis now, increasing in responsibility in minutes, and poof, his minutes are going up. So I think this is going to help build his confidence so that when TJ Ginla comes back, Kelowna really has the 1-2 punch that they want. They're probably going to add at the WHL trade deadline, which will only help all of these players'
Exactly.
numbers.
Yeah. I
And they're
love
going
that
to go
about junior
try and go
hockey.
for,
Yeah.
well, I mean, they always load up,
Yeah.
but
I
they're going to
love
go
it.
on a run. they're going to go on
Yeah.
a fun run because Kelowna, as we know, is hosting the Memorial Cup. So
Yep.
we're going to be seeing Hayden Papanekas play well into May this season. So there's going to be a lot of time to evaluate him.
Fun stuff, Habs fans. The road to 20,000 subscribers on our channel begins with each and every single one of you. Shout out to all of our sponsors from cheapesttshirts.ca to Little Bear. We're going to be live a week from today ahead of the Canadiens puck drop against the Boston Bruins for a live watch party at Maison Publique McLean's. Come by and say hi. Enjoy some great fun with the show, a good game in a good ambiance with great service and some cool prizes to hand out. And of course, our friends at cabletel.com, the best in home security, servicing the Quebec area for over 20 years. Get all information on their website at cabletel.com. And of course, Catherine Prince, Remax Platine certified broker with over 20 years in the business. Visit her website, Catherine with a K, catherineprince.ca. Marco D'Amico, fun stuff talking about Habs prospects deep into their seasons here. And really the progression is fun to talk about and fun to pay attention to. Looking forward to seeing where this goes. Thanks, man.
Always a pleasure, guys. Have a good one.